Welcome to the Cares League podcast. Our mission here is simple. It's to explore the intersection of healthcare education, entrepreneurship, and technology. Today, we have a truly remarkable guest. She is a doctor of physical therapy, a certified lymphedema therapist, a former professor, and the owner of Rise Pilates Studio in Tampa Bay. But what truly sets her apart is her unique specialization in end-of-life care. Her TEDx talk on rethinking care at life's end has been a powerful inspiration to me both personally and professionally. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Emily Robinson. Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So to get started, could you just share a little bit about what led you to physical therapy and what your experience early in the profession was like?
Yeah, so I have grown up in the Hillsborough County area here I've been here 35 years, and going to public school, K through 12, and then going to community college and then to USF. I didn't really know for a long time what I wanted to do. And I bounced around, retail jobs. And when I was at HCC, I decided I've got my liberal arts degree. When I go to USF, I'm just going to maybe go into business or something like that. But I quickly found out that I did not have the strong math background that was really required for the business and specifically accounting skills. And I hadn't really been guided one way or another as to what I should do over the years. A lot of my family members they worked in business or journalism. My sister is a lawyer, a lot of lawyers in our family. And I knew that none of those things were really going to be for me at that time. So I had one aunt, she pretty early on in my life, following her, she was a hospice nurse. And so I got to see that from a different perspective, but I never considered nursing for myself. So when I got to USF, they had a biomedical program. That was one of USF Helps. That's one of their biggest things, And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'll get here and I'll see some sort of medical that I maybe could/want to do.
Yeah.
So I went to a club there and I was walking around and I saw the pre-med club, but I also then saw a smaller club for podiatry. And it took me back to years of dancing and struggling with a lot of foot and ankle issues. And I thought to myself, I think this is the type of medicine that I could practice if I was going to do something.
Sure.
And, our feet bother some people. Feet do not bother me. So I'd enrolled in the classes and I was on my way and moving up through the general science classes. I then had to take organic chemistry, and I could not, I can't see the shapes in my head. Stoichiometry and chemistry was hard enough. And so I was really at a crossroads because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't go any further with this. And so what are my alternatives? And so I just racked my brain and I was like, I had to keep going in classes. And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, had asked me if I considered something like allied health. So physical or occupational therapy.
Sure.
And I had never needed physical therapy and I hadn't been exposed to it through family members. So I was kind of hesitant because that almost didn't seem medical to me. Okay. It was like, if I wasn't going to be a medical doctor, like what was this? And so I decided to shadow a physical therapist. And after that day, I was in an outpatient setting. I was hooked. I loved it. It seemed like, the best of both worlds. You're helping somebody through an injury, but, you're not necessarily dealing with so much that comes with being a medical doctor. Yeah. And I became the president of the Future Physical Therapist organization at USF in undergrad. And then I just started collecting more volunteer hours and doing more things in the community to help build my resume for applying for PT school. And then I got in and, I thought I would really be working for a large hospital system organization, as I did start out that way. And that was early on in the profession for me. And I became a wife, a mom, lots of things happened, a pandemic, and my family members, I helped them through their specific health issues. And then all of a sudden here I find myself now.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years out.
Wow. I can relate a lot to what you said when you were shadowing and like walking with someone through the stages of like healing from an injury. I think that's kind of what drew me to physical therapy as well. So, moving forward, now you have this unique specialization in end-of-life care.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a path most physical therapists take. Was there a pivotal moment that led you there?
Yeah. So one of my first jobs out of PT school, I was working in outpatient ortho and I loved it, right? I was working, weekend warriors, athletes, just general population rehab. But I had a clinical internship at Moffitt Cancer Center. And I had volunteered there and I absolutely loved it. And it seemed like such a challenge to me. And when my brain really had to work and think is when I felt like I was making so much more of a difference. Not that I didn't feel that in outpatient, but Moffitt was near and dear to my heart. And so when I got a job there, then I could kind of take off and gain my specialty in lymphedema. But what I noticed there especially was I would be working on the inpatient side on the floor in the hospital, and I would chart review on the patient and I would call the nurse to ask how they were doing. And the nurse would say, "Emily, they're comfort measures only. You don't need to come by." And I started thinking to myself, what does that really mean? And why is allied healthcare and physical therapy, why do we get left out of that when there's so much that we were taught in school that we can do to help somebody at the end of their life? But even back in school, we didn't spend time talking really about hospice or end of life care. So I think I had a hospice nurse approach me, and she said to me, well, because I just asked if there were ever any jobs in physical therapy. And at the time, she looked at me like I was growing a second head out, like it's doctors and nurses and CNAs. And I thought to myself, well, if you ever change your mind. And then, years down the road, we see now hospice using physical therapy, occupational therapy, other allied healthcare professionals. And so it doesn't seem that, out of the ordinary now. But the real pivotal moments for me came at two big impasses. The first was my mom being diagnosed with cancer, and then working through the pandemic in a hospital and seeing a lot of loss of life.
Yeah, from my experience working in critical care, many patients are dying in a hospital setting, kind of like what you were experiencing at Moffitt, and it can feel chaotic and clinical. And I noticed in your TEDx talk, you painted a picture of two very different rooms at the end of one's life, one in a hospital and then one at home. For healthcare providers working in the first room, like say you were still at Moffitt, and so people working in the hospital, what are strategies to humanize end-of-life care for patients and their families?
Yeah, I think I had taken a really great course called Emotional CPR. So it was by a Canadian company. And, during the pandemic, we kind of saw some of those courses emerge, if you will. And it really is the basis. It's active listening, right? And how often do we feel charged as healthcare professionals to go in and we've got our healthcare hat on and we're going to tell you what you should do and things like that. And when you're working with somebody who's passing away, it really becomes less about what you need them to do almost and what you can do for them and what they want, right? And it should always be what someone wants. Well, we see that gets really sort of gray, right, in the hospital. Absolutely. But especially at that end of life, you go in somebody's room and as a healthcare provider, there's not much time. And you might have family members around that haven't yet come to that realization themselves. But you're making eye contact with this person. And it's like, you know, and they know. And it's like a delicate dance, if you will, of like, how can I not go in there and as a physical therapist be like, all right, we're going to get you up. You've got to walk 150 feet. We got to get you out of here. To be like, okay, what, you know, do you want to sit up? Do you want to get in a wheelchair and go down to the gift shop and just, you know, peep what's down there today? Or do you want to go grab something that's like, you know, maybe something, if they can have something to eat or drink, something like that, and not make it so much about objective measures, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think, like, as a physical therapist, it's hard to, like, you know, break away your focus from rehab, like recovery. Yeah. So I think, like, you know, when people are comfort measures only, meaning there's no, you know, they're not wanting any aggressive medical intervention. Yeah. Physical therapy sometimes kind of steps out of the way. Like, I'm no longer needed here, respectfully. Yeah. But if someone wants to mobilize as part of comfort measures, then I think, yeah, I would agree. We're absolutely, like, there's an indication there.
Yeah. And we, you know, we're trained in all of these wonderful manual therapy skills, right? And so I remember a patient saying to me at Moffitt one time, she would say, oh, could you just like lightly rub my shoulders? And you don't really see any of that. Medical massage, we see outside of the hospital, right? But where are those practitioners really present? And it becomes well, we don't have them because it's, you know, we're not billing for that, right, here. You know, we want people to get out of the hospital, right? We're not trying to keep people in. However, we're seeing more of an emergence of hospice wings and floors in hospitals. Yeah. And so as you see that, it would be relevant, right? But even just for care in general, we know therapeutic touch has such a presence in how people feel. And I think offering it to somebody is really powerful. And it's something I feel like as acute care physical therapists, we don't even, you know, we stick away from that a little bit.
Yeah. So in addition to your work with people at the end of their life, you also own Rise Pilates Studio. On the surface, those appear to be kind of vastly different paths. What's the common thread? What drew you to both of those?
Yeah. So when I got out of teaching, I had gone from patient care into higher ed, out of higher ed, doing some adjunct work, and really I was at a crossroads of, do I go back to work for a larger organization or do I do something for myself that I really want to do? And I remember during my time inpatient and outpatient as a physical therapist, I had practiced Pilates. And it was something we were taught the exercises of the Joseph Pilates method in school. And it's interesting because I think some people, you know, Mary McMillan obviously is the mother of physical therapy. However, Joseph Pilates in World War I was a rehab aide and came up with his methods. And we got to school and I was like, I've been doing this. Like, this is Pilates. A lot of these exercises are rooted in it. And I had gone to studios in private Pilates and thought, oh, this is fun. I like this. I like doing this. And I liked doing it for me. But I realized with other mentors that I was teaching others these exercises. And I thought, you know, I'm going to get certified. I always want to carry extra things with me. And I started realizing that I had an opportunity to share with groups of people Pilates and also one-on-one in my physical therapy practice. And so for me, it became something when I was in a very, very bad point in my life, mentally and physically, that Pilates really helped me. It's like I could get on the mat or I could get on a reformer and I I could disassociate at the time. I had to work through that stuff, right? Like I knew I needed to not push it down and work through it. But it definitely, when you've got those endorphins running through you, it's a healing process. And so Pilates is a healing modality for me. And I have worked with clients in the hospital that maybe they were going to pass inevitably, right? But we were doing some exercises rooted in Pilates, and it was helping them to have some core stability to sit up to talk with their loved ones.
Yeah.
And then as I had end of life clients working with me, their family members would say, oh, you do Pilates? And maybe they were sitting for long periods of time or they weren't moving. And so while their loved one was resting, we would do a little bit of Pilates. And so it made them feel better. So it's interesting because movement to me is medicine in whatever form it is. Whether you're moving somebody or you're moving yourself, it was just this really beautiful thing to be able to provide that for people.
Yeah.
And it's led me to do a lot of really fun things in the community also and give back. And that's very important to me as well.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. The leap from being an employee to a business owner is, it's really scary for a lot of healthcare professionals. We're not taught that in school. It's, not something we're generally exposed to. Was there a big leap of faith for you when you started your company with Rise? What were those early conversations with friends and family like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I got was, where's physical therapy in your business name?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I still planned to do my private concierge physical therapy, but Rise came to me, and the idea, the notion that together we rise and we can rise together really stuck with me. And it was kind of in those early phases where everybody was like, so are you like ditching physical therapy completely? And I was like, no, but I have it's probably one of my faults that people who know me may say that, yes, Emily sometimes has an issue with thinking I can do things differently and perhaps better. And I've learned that it's more of the differently and not the better, because that's an ego check on myself. But I would work for organizations and I would find that I would constantly go up against a fence and try to push it back. And I realized that did nobody any good, really. And it only hurt me more because I was part of a cog in a larger wheel.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it was a big leap of faith for me to take that. But without the support of my family and friends and mentors helping me, I don't think I would have had just the strength and the wherewithal to do it. And going out during a time where my mom was incredibly sick and trying to do two things, and still be a mother, a wife, and a daughter, and all those things was incredibly difficult. But it was really freeing to realize that I wish I'd realized this in an organization, and I would tell PTs and allied healthcare professionals too, like, you do have a choice, right? And sometimes I feel like we martyr ourselves and think if we don't do it, nobody else will, but somebody else will do it.
Yeah.
And it's okay if they do.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had the building blocks of being an entrepreneur from day one, honestly. So, how did you think about like the business model and pricing and those sort of like nitty gritty details as you started Rise Pilates?
So the first thing I looked at, to take it back to the physical therapy part of my practice, was the physician fee schedule that I was teaching students about, and what Medicare, I was kind of going off of those broader guidelines, because I knew that at the time I didn't want to I won't say deal, but I didn't have the bandwidth to accommodate insurers at the time.
Okay, yeah.
So I looked at what I could do from a cash pay perspective, and I started talking to just people. They weren't necessarily clients, but I asked them, I'd say, what would you pay a personal trainer to work for an hour? And they'd say about $65. And then I'd say, what would you pay a massage therapist for a massage for an hour? And they'd say about $60. So I'd say that's about $130 out the door for two separate things. And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I do variations of both of those things, and it's rooted in a different practice. And not to take away from either of those two practices, right? Personal trainers, massage therapists, very, very important individuals. But also what I brought to it was then the Pilates. And so I could craft a different care plan for somebody who needed it. So again, I didn't go into it also thinking, it's a land grab. I talk with a lot of people, and I feel like in our industry, it's like we're almost made to compete.
Yeah.
But there's so much abundance to go around. Also, especially in end of life. Somebody was like, the competition, I was like, well, we're all going to die. I was like, it's really more, I think if you really look towards your community and you're not trying to make very far, vast reaches, I can only do what I can do, right? I'm limited. I can't see, millions of people. I would love to spread only positivity and goodwill to people on a large scale. But when it comes to rehabbing people or working with them, I do realize that I have a smaller subset. So I tried to keep that really in mind too early on, and not feel like I had to monopolize things.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Were there any significant challenges, I guess, along those lines? You mentioned a couple, like any really big challenges that almost like made it like, I can't continue.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like there's about 5 of those a week where I'm like, oh my goodness, am I doing the right thing? Or am I meant to do this? Or do I need to go back and work for somebody else and not work for myself? Because while I do work for myself, we all still answer to somebody, right? And so whether it's your clients, your boss, anything like that. So I have realized navigating certain hurdles as an independent business owner, how do I expand without needing to manage a lot of other people?
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm still learning how to manage myself still. And the thought of taking on employees kind of makes me like get, a little sweaty upper lip and an upper brow there, because it is a lot of responsibility. And I try to keep it small and realize that things scale in their own time. But I feel like that is one hurdle. I'm always trying to say, okay, calm down there. Like,
yeah, sure.
You're not trying to be secretariat and win all, the triple crown, and really, like daily ego checks for myself.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective that I am such a small part of a larger, community. And so the hurdles, they're there. And I just try and hope and gratitude to get me through those.
Yeah. So, niching, like having a small niche seems to be really important in small business. For you right now, like, are you hoping to scale? Are you hoping to are you happy with your current clientele?
Yeah. I think somebody the other day introduced me to somebody, and they said, oh, this is Emily. She's a Pilates guru and a hospice PT. And when somebody introduces you like that, I'm like, oh, I teach Pilates. Thanks for the guru part. But I found myself correcting them and saying, well, I'm an end of life specialist and not a hospice PT, because Hospice, right, is the organization, and I don't work for hospice. So it's a lot of clearing up some misconceptions, I think, before I can scale. But I do believe on a smaller community level, perhaps there is room to scale on a larger, national level. Because I do have some exciting ideas up my sleeve that may not necessarily be just in those two things. So I'm open to the idea of it. I think I still have a good bit to learn in my current garden before I try to farm
Absolutely.
larger.
So, given your experience like in clinical practice, in education, and in entrepreneurship and healthcare entrepreneurship, what role do you see, if any, AI and like advances in technology playing in like humanizing rather than like kind of taking away that aspect?
Yeah, that's an excellent way you put it, because we can be so cynical and say that AI is going to take, how many times do we think, oh, AI is going to take away and it's not going to be an added benefit?
Yeah.
Yes. And especially I've had some clinicians say to me, well, you know, once they can get a better robot lift system in the hospital, what's our job? Like, our job is just to lift people out of bed. We already got lifts, and those aren't even in any. So I think about it, but we don't want to be cynical, skeptical, sure, right? But having that cynicism to leave it out. And I think where we can utilize technology to humanize the entire process would really be to glean on some of its efficiencies, right? To cut down on some of those things that keep us from connecting, right? We think about the paperwork and the documenting. And I mean, I remember way back when starting and seeing the doctors, and I'm like, so annoyed that they get this dragon medical where they can just talk into it. They can do the talk to text. Where's that for me as a physical therapist? I'm charting on these like wild notes. And now, you know, you're starting to see that in the hospital. Everybody, you know, doesn't necessarily like to use it, but the fact that it's there, I believe, and as we can produce information quicker, I think that's helpful. It's just about making sure that it's still research based and science and evidence rooted, right? We see a lot of things that aren't, and like AI does a nice disclaimer on a lot of the things that, okay, you need to do your research on this. This isn't, you can't just take this as a blanket statement or blanket research. And so I think we're going to see that improve, and it will help us be able to become more efficient and perhaps plan things better.
Yeah, absolutely. Still need a human in the loop, especially in healthcare. So my next question for you would be like, working with end-of-life patients requires, I imagine, a different skill set, different level of emotional resilience. How have you developed that resilience? Did it come naturally? Did it not? And how do you avoid burnout?
Yeah, excellent question as well. I think when I meet people and they're like, I could never do what you do. And I think to myself, well, do you have a loved one at home? Because chances are you're going to have to do what I do in some capacity. Right. And how many people I've talked to, though, who have not witnessed their loved one pass. And there is this kind of chasm there with, you haven't yet experienced that, and that's okay. But it's like my sister energy. Like, I want to be there for you when you get there to that point, so that you don't feel alone in walking someone through the end of their life. But I think as a very verbose person and someone who does like to talk a lot, what it's shown me is when I work with people at the end of their life, I do a lot less of this.
Yeah.
And it's the body language, it's in all intents and purposes, to not make it sound like magic or fairy dust, it's the energy that you bring. So I really prepare myself before I go into any of those situations, and I talk myself through how I remind myself what I'm going there for, how I need to be, what I need to bring to them, and what I need to not take on. And so I think that has helped me, because I used to not do that, right? I would wear it all. I would take it all. I would say, oh, I'm such an empath, and other people's feelings really stay with me. But again, that's kind of the martyr position to take. And it's not mine to take on. When somebody says, I see your pain, what does that really mean? right? You don't have to feel it to be able to see it, but be able to sit there with somebody. And so that is an art. I feel like some people have to develop a little bit more strongly. But from a younger age, I experienced a lot of death from my grandparents. So my parents had me there. So I was able to witness those things. And I think in some just families, cultural backgrounds, we see vast differences in how death is considered. And some children aren't exposed to it at all. It's like we don't talk about it. And that wasn't the case in my family. And my mom was a really, really pivotal person for me in everything, because from when I was young, she very starkly let me know I was here on this earth to die and to make the most of it and to help people. So I was very aware from a young age, like what my almost mission and purpose was. And that always kept reigning through. When something would happen to somebody in the family, my mom would say, remember what I've taught you. Remember what you've been taught. And so when it came time for her to pass, it was like this great honor that I had and a gift to be able to walk her through that and to walk her home, we say, because she would joke. She's like, I'm becoming an end of life doula. She's like, oh, I'm your guinea pig. And, some people might say that's kind of morbid, but she really helped guide me through. And she would be really honest with me and say, Emily, I think what you're doing is great. And then she would give me that good, the sandwich feedback or just even feedback and be like, consider this. And so it's coming up on a year that she's passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I think to myself, it's so hard, but she helped the grieving process for me so much because she championed me all the way through, and she believed in me. I think when a lot of people looked at me and they're like, you're weird for being so into death. And I'm like, but to me, we get so hyped up about birth, right? Like I remember being pregnant with my daughter and everybody being so excited, right? They're like, a baby's coming. This is amazing. And I was freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. But I couldn't let anybody know, right? It's like, you've got to keep a baby's coming. We're excited for this. Yeah. And I'm not saying we have to get jazzed the same way about death, but if we just had like an ounce of that like magic to it, that it was like this very beautiful, sacred thing to do. And instead of like making it so sad and being very somber, we honored more and just really took to someone's memory and asking what they want. It like empowers it. And so it makes it easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I could see how having that approach would bring a lot of peace, like both to the family and the person who's passing, because everyone's seeing, like, we see you, we see what you want, we see what you've worked for, you've had this amazing life, like we're honoring all of those things, and like here's the next stage kind of thing. I could see how that would be very powerful.
Yeah. And I think what you said, I see you, right? Mm-hmm. So often we hear people use that phrase, I see you. But what does it really mean to see someone, right? And you see them for all of their, their wonderfulness, and you see them for all of their flaws, and you see them, but you still choose to be very, like our core principles in physical therapy, altruistic, compassionate, things like that, that we took an oath to do for people.
Yeah. That's a different take on those vows, that commitment that we made. Yeah. So you mentioned your mom as playing like a really big role in mentoring you towards this specialization. Any other mentors, resources, books that have had a profound impact on you?
Yeah. When I was looking to become an end-of-life specialist, I went to our professional organization's website, and there was some stuff, but there really wasn't a lot. And I started noticing I would find small businesses, just grassroots movements. And I went to a few death cafes, and I talked to the people leading them that were death doulas. And I started talking to people in the legal world that did estates and wills and advance directives. And I started to look at those people also as mentors and kind of get away from the profession only, because I realized that in order to do this, I couldn't just put blinders on and it only be physical therapy, because dying involves so many people. So I talked to a lot of nurses who specialized in end of life, and even some palliative care physicians as well, and social workers. I really tried to reach out and glean from people, you know, what do you think about me doing this? And what do you think the pitfalls are? What do you think can be really great about this? And a lot of the feedback that I got from some people early on, when I would ask them about mentorship, they would say, I think you're on an uphill battle that I don't think I can help you with, because private equity in hospice care or in dying in general is so large. And I feel like it's a David and Goliath situation.
Yeah.
So I was really fortunate to meet people at that time who said to me, I would love to mentor you, but I think for the time that you're going to need and things like that, the information, I'm not going to be able to help you. And that was something I really appreciated at the time, because so many years in physical therapy, you know, they tell us, find a mentor. I would find mentors and they couldn't give me the time or the support, yet they just did it because maybe they had something they needed to fulfill for their job, or just they, again, maybe martyred themselves out. And I really appreciated the people saying they couldn't help, because then that led me to people who could. Sure. So meeting people who really do believe in me, but with the belief and reality, right?
Yeah.
Who didn't sugarcoat things for me, and also have helped me figure out, again, like you said, it's so niche. So how do we grow that niche to a equitable, for the community equity, and then also to be successful and viable business for me?
Sure. Right. And have you found those people? Like, have you found people that are able to help you?
Yes, okay. I have. And a lot of them, ironically, have been like clients of mine. I found a lot of clients who have really been inspired, and then other entrepreneurs who have reached out. I've noticed, I'd make a disclaimer a little bit on the other entrepreneurs I've worked with, is that sometimes not sometimes. I've realized, clear, like Brene Brown says, clear is kind. And when you're doing your own business, it seems like pedal to the metal, everything's going at like 180 miles an hour, right? And we sometimes don't take the time to sit back and be like, no, I have time. But a lot of people will reach out and they want to take your time, and you have to figure out what's a good investment of that. Yeah. Right. And so I'm noticing that more in the entrepreneurial world. People will say, oh, I'm very interested in either partnering, investing, collaborating. But what does that look like? Right. In terms of time, effort, maybe monetary things, and being kind to someone, clear and kind, that has always helped me in terms of navigating that.
Sure. Like professional relationships, like, this is what I need. Are you able to offer that?
Yes. Something that we don't necessarily see when we work in a organization with the hierarchical, you know.
Sure. It's not a skill we're like really encouraged to build in like traditional clinical settings. Pivoting a little bit, as a former professor, you have a unique perspective on healthcare education. For any young people listening who are maybe choosing a career in healthcare, what advice would you give them to prepare for a career in healthcare, and also like to keep their options open to maybe like a non-traditional path?
Yeah, I love that you said non-traditional path, because I never ever considered a non-traditional path, because that was not where my head was. I think the biggest thing, and as a millennial, seeing the younger generations, a better job is being done of understanding the financial risk that you're taking for your education. And it breaks my heart because the return on investment for many degrees in allied healthcare specifically, there's a mismatch there right now. Not to say that that won't change, but I would encourage anyone looking to go into the healthcare profession to seek out a financial advisor and really help with the planning of that, so that when you get through, you're about to take on this what seems like just a heavy responsibility job. And one of the last things you want is the strain of financial burden hanging over your head.
Yeah.
So I would also consider to look at non-traditional paths, and if you could find somebody who could help explore those non-traditional, but still very rooted in, research, science, those types of backgrounds. Scope of practice, for sure. Yeah. Because not saying that everything, there are many forms of science, but I do very much believe that the art of studying something in a practice should still continue, and we should never just accept anything for as it is. We're always looking to disprove things in science, right? And I would tell people to never give that up, because no matter how far we come in technology, right, there's always going to be things.
Sure.
But yeah, the financial planning, if I could go back myself, that's what I would have.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I can agree with that. Moving towards wrapping up a little bit, what's a belief you held about healthcare or business that you've completely changed your mind about?
Whew. I think the one belief that I really have that stood out to me is that you have to give a certain amount of yourself or all of yourself to be the best practitioner for somebody in a healthcare setting.
Mm-hmm.
And even in business, right? I mean, the best version of you looks so different in so many different parts of our life, right? And so the notion that it's this, you have to be this certain way, and putting really almost sometimes unrealistic expectations of yourself, right? That we create, it's such a myth. And that when you break that down and you're not trying to be like that, then you actually are being, right, the best version of what you can be, because you're not making it so hard on yourself and putting that extra pressure on yourself, because none of us are larger than life, right? And having a complex in a healthcare profession of, if I am this, then I can be this for the people, or I can fix this, or I can cure this, that's just it's something we can't live up to.
Sure.
As a human being. And I think striving for that will just really drive you insane.
So understanding your limits, staying grounded in what you're able to offer to the situation.
Yeah.
Am I summarizing that
You
correctly?
are, those two things, staying grounded, I think that really also sums it up, because it's a little bit of you feel lifted because you're asked to do so much and you are taking on a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
But realizing that how much of that we place on ourselves.
Sure.
So we're the ones who can ground ourselves, and we really know our limits, right? And so bringing it back to the inner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. That is all I have for today. Yeah. If anyone watching wants to follow up with Dr. Robinson, we'll have her website and the link to her TEDx talk linked in the show description. Thank you.